Welcome back to another episode of Am I Doing This Wrong? It's your gals, Morgan and Ryann, back for a new topic. So fun. How you doing, Ryann?
Hey, everyone. Hey, Morgan. I am good, doing well. We just got back from a little Vegas rendezvous, which was quite the time. It's a lot different going to Vegas in your older years, since we're so mature. But
Matua.
mature, yes. As the mature say. As the mature folks say, mature. Anyways, but it was really fun. It was really good to, do a little weekend getaway. And I'm actually planning for my next trip. So from one to the next, I'm just bi-coastal in this bitch.
You're quite the jet setter. Very exciting.
Quite the jet setter, yeah. But I did also want to mention, I know we talked about me reconnecting with my therapist, and I haven't been able to reconnect with my therapist yet, but I did start journaling again today, which I kind of left on the back burner for a while. And so that really helped. I had a lot of anxiety going into this next trip and not just having a lot of time in between. And also just dealing with other shit, because there's always other shit to deal with. And so that felt really good. And it put me in a really healthy headspace for today and this recording. So yeah, I'm excited.
Oh, good. That's exciting. I saw my therapist because I couldn't see her while I was on the East Coast because she's not licensed. Well, she's licensed in a couple of states, but not in Maryland specifically. So it was a nice little reconnect with her after about a month and a few days.
Okay.
So that was nice. Yeah.
Nice.
So she's just the best. I love her. So.
Awesome.
But that was good. Yeah, it was nice to catch up. So
yeah. And how are you doing other than that?
Good. A little tired from our trip. It's just a lot,
We used to do those trips like nothing, like drive there for a night, drive back the next day, like nothing.
I was thinking that. I was like, how did we do this drive so often? I was so tired. Not to mention the room debacle, which you guys, let's not give the whole story again, but we will just tell you our first room was covered in throw up, not ours. We had just got there.
Yeah. We didn't even get time to, bring the room to shreds before, because it was already primed for us. We'll say that. Somebody had already christened it with their Vegas weekend. And we got there on a Friday. So they
had a Vegas Wednesday, Thursday. I don't know what they were doing, but whatever they were getting into, we also unfortunately got into. So that was gross.
Well said. We will leave it at that. Spare you the details. We'll say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it turned out to be a good weekend, and we are here with another episode.
Yeah, let's do it. So this one was an interesting topic. This was kind of fun to research. So let's talk about it. But first, of course, disclaimers. We are not experts. We're not doctors. We're just two friends trying to figure it out. And so with that, let's talk about age difference.
Ooh, oh yeah. Let's fucking talk.
Yeah. So especially in regards to dating. So first things first, starting the research, celebrities everywhere. People are obsessed with celebrities. We know this, right? We all, have all kinds of social media and all media all the time. But for this topic specifically, there were so many age difference between, actors and this and that. I really had to dive a little deeper to get more information.
Yeah.
But I'll just give you this little quote from the first article. So it says, quote, from Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher to George and Amal Clooney, high-profile age gap relationships have always set tongues wagging.
Yeah, so people have always talked about it.
Right.
Quote, yeah.
So this article was called The Taboo That Won't Die. So I thought that was interesting. The average age difference in U.S. heterosexual relationships was relatively small, about 2.3 years. Many couples have a much wider gap. So in Western countries, around 8% of male-female couples have an age gap of 10 years or more, rising to 25% in male-on-male unions and 15% of female-female relationships.
Interesting. And that does make sense because as you get into like niches or, specific orientations, obviously the group is going to be smaller, or at least, to the naked eye, because we all know there are people out there that are interested in other things. We'll say that. But yeah, it does make sense because when you go on a dating app like Hinge, right? Like there's so many options for, straight relationships, but when you get into the more niche, like when you get into the more niche communities, it's going to like dwindle a little bit, which means that your options might be, a little bit like more difference in age, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. That makes sense. I did not think of it that way, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So
also, gay men just like saying daddy, or zaddy.
Zaddy with a Z, yeah.
With a Z.
Don't make Jose come for you.
Yeah. Right. It's not daddy, it's zaddy.
So for some, the gap is even larger. Data suggests that around 1% of heterosexual couples in the US have an age difference of 28 years or more.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's a whole lifetime.
That's full. Just period. I don't know.
That is. And let me say, like, that's the thing. I was even thinking about this, but, aside from the episode, I had conversations with a few people about this over the last, few months, I'd say, because, we are coming into a different time of awareness, right? And, really kind of analyzing things in a different way and not just saying, like, oh, that's just the way so-and-so is, or oh, that's just the way it is. It's like, well, what does that mean? Like, why is it that way? And I do think I was actually just listening to a podcast not too long ago, and one of the guests was talking about how their age gap was so much bigger with their first relationship. And it was very much so normalized, and I do think now there's a different awareness about it, but age gaps have always been a thing. And I don't think that there should necessarily be any shame to it. I just think it's because more often than not, it can come with a certain form of manipulation, because that person is younger and just doesn't have the wisdom or experience that the other person does. So, but I do just want to start with saying that there is a lot of shame tied to it a lot of times, but I don't think that's necessarily fair because it has always been around, right? People have been dating of all ages. Obviously consent is important, and of age legally is also very important. But just in general,
right.
Our culture, a lot of our references, especially old movies, a lot has changed with that. And I do think there's something to be said about it because it was very normalized. It was all over our culture. Being with an older man, being with an older woman, that's a very common trope that you can find in most quote classic movies. So
right. And even farther back, I mean, arranged marriages back in medieval times, all that, the husband or the king or whomever it was 50 and his bride was 14. So yeah, I know. I'm not saying it was great. I'm just saying it's been around. So.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Fair.
So our views around age gap relationships have been shaped by thousands of years of evolutionary psychology. So generations of social and cultural norms. So basically everything we were just talking about. So Did you read these notes?
I took a peek.
Yeah, right. So within the last 100 years, economic shifts have increased gender equalities and have changed what is considered a normal age gap. And recent social justice movements have increased scrutiny of power dynamics in mixed age relationships. Couples with large age gaps often face judgment. And while some experts believe that this could be about to change, others argue that young people could be becoming more disapproving of mixed age love than ever before.
Yeah. Yeah, I do see that. I see that in culture. I see that shift happening. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it makes a good point. I mean, I think that's why the article was called The Taboo That Won't Die, right? Because even though we have had we have seen so many examples historically. This makes a point in bringing up like how things have changed socially, economically, equalities between, race, gender, class, all that has shifted. So I think it would still be considered a taboo because, that whole like trope of like a gold digging trophy wife, I think the thought is you don't have to be that anymore. You can be a woman who has their own achievements in this world. And so you might still be looked down upon if that was the case. We're not saying you're a gold digging trophy wife. I'm just using that as an example.
Right. No, that's a really good point. Yeah, fair.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about age gap and mating psychology. So in many cultures, it is not considered acceptable to fall in love with someone who's much older or younger than you. And this was according to a consultant psychologist and co-founder of the Chelsea Psychology Clinic in London. So she goes on to say, from an evolutionary perspective, the drive to have a family can have an impact on who we choose to have a relationship with, both from a biological perspective, but also in the sense that of both parents being alive to raise the child.
Yeah, makes sense. Totally.
Right. It does make sense. And I think that's why those percentages that we brought up earlier, were smaller with the heterosexual couples versus same-sex couples.
That's a good point
or
too.
Could play a part at least, but I think you brought up a really good point too. So
yeah, no, that's really true. That makes complete sense. I mean, we know children are a lot, and I don't even have one.
Right.
I'm just an observer, an outside observer that can tell. I would like to have a second hand at all times.
Right, exactly.
Third and fourth hand, whatever. You know what I mean.
So how we think about age in romantic relationships is not arbitrary. Rather, it's a crucial factor shaping how we approach relationships, according to evolutionary psychology. So this psychology is based on the premise that the human mind has evolved adaptive strategies to support reproduction and survival. So along these lines, ancestrally, women benefited by seeking men who have the status and resources to support their child rearing and the willingness to do so.
Yeah.
Which, like, good luck. You know what I mean? Just kidding. That's fucked up.
Yeah. If he's going Dutch on the first date, he's not going to be much help in the relationship. No, I'm just kidding. But no, that totally checks out. And that's the thing, like, as much as, me, a person that considers myself, a very radical feminist in a lot of ways, I do still know that it's a very real thing that if children were brought into the picture, I'm obviously not going to be working my full capacity, during that pregnancy or after. You could struggle with, post-traumatic, what is it?
Postpartum.
Postpartum. You could, struggle with postpartum, and the father could also struggle with postpartum. So having someone else that is not necessarily detached, right? Like hopefully that person is as involved as you are, but it does mean that your body is literally not going to be able to do the same things that it was doing before. And that could be forever, that could be for a few months. You just don't know. And so as much as, like I said, I don't typically subscribe to gender norms in that way. I do understand the reasoning as to why it would be more beneficial and helpful to have someone, around your same age or closer in age, right? Who still has their wits about them that can, help out. Because it's a very big part of bringing, that child into the world. And if that person can, maybe finance or can support financially, and they're older, well, then that's a good thing, like then you have the support, maybe by hiring help or whatever it is. But
oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So get a sugar daddy and have a baby while being the baby,
Get a zaddy, have a baby, then zaddy will have two babies. Not in a weird way. So these traits are tied to older men. Men, meanwhile, have evolved a preference for younger women because their youth is a signal for fertility. And over eons and eons, men have better reproductive success when they partner with women who can bear children.
Yeah,
Which
just give men more reason to get some younger and newer, right? Like it's
right. They
biological.
don't need scientific backup for the behavior. We already know.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this explains why women prefer and tend to marry slightly older men, and why men tend to prefer and marry slightly younger women. With this age gap increases as men age. So the men get older, but their lady preferences don't.
Yeah.
That's so large. What's that?
That's the famous line from Dazed and Confused, right? That's what I love about college girls. I get older and they stay the same age.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Matthew McConaughey is a creep, but that is really a very common, like I said, these tropes that are in movies and cult classics do translate to real life. Like that's a
right. There's a through line there.
There's a through line there. Thank you.
Yeah. So large age gap relationships, therefore, often reflect men's evolved preferences for younger, fertile women and women's evolved preferences for older, high status men.
Okay.
So, ladies, we're not off the hook, okay? We're not just here to bash men today.
I mean, a little bit, but not primarily.
Right. So for both men and women, fertility tends to decline after the age of about 35. Mm-hmm. And though women lose their ability to conceive much more rapidly, it makes sense that we've evolved to be attracted to people who are similarly aged.
Mm. Yeah.
So this makes sense. And it's interesting to hear about it from like a scientific standpoint, you know, a psychological standpoint. But I don't think people, I mean, maybe some people are, but I'm not like curating my dating profile for these reasons. But I'm also not looking to have a baby like this year. So
right. I mean,
that would be different.
Right.
If I was.
Fair. I mean, I definitely curated my profile very specifically. I think I talked about that on the dating apps episode. Mm-hmm. I was very specific because I was like, look, if I'm going to be on here, like it needs to be this, 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 and this, and this. And like, if you don't meet the cut, thank God, you know, bullet dodged.
Right. But you weren't thinking like, I'm looking for a high status man because I'm a woman approaching 35 and my fertility level is.
Everything up. I mean, honestly, everything up until the fertility point, yes, is true. Like, yeah, okay. I was looking for a high status person because more so for me, it was just like, I want to be a high status person. So like, what is your low status going to do for me? You know what I mean? Like,
that's fair.
So yeah, I was that person. So
you're the zaddy. Look at you.
I'm the zaddy. Yeah. Hell yeah. Very aggressive.
It's true. So although there is relatively little data on age in the LGBTQ plus relationships, we know that age gaps among same-sex couples are much more common, perhaps reflecting how much the ability to biologically conceive together influences how we approach finding a partner.
Okay.
So,
yeah. I mean, again, yes, certainly I see the validity in that for sure. But I do think it also has other factors as well. Like, you know, being, like I said, just in any niche group, like you are going to have just less options. And I do think that it is important to think about that as well. Like being older and adopting, or being older and, you know, going the, a different
like
route. Surrogate, right, other than natural birth with your partner, I do think opens you up for a lot more options, and you can be a little bit choosier in your younger age and wait until you're a little bit older. So I see validity on both sides for sure. Yeah.
Well, it does go on to say it's not just about parenting, though. Pairing up with someone of a similar age makes your relationship more likely to go the distance, research shows. Experts believe that this is because these couples tend to go through life challenges and stages at similar times and can therefore continue to find common ground.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think it's hard enough evolving as a person on your own. But when you do bring somebody into that, it tends to be, it's nice to be able to commiserate in those midlife, quarter life crises or whatever you're going through when other people are also experiencing that as well. However, I will say, I think depending on how big the age gap is, it also is nice to have someone a little bit older because they can kind of like guide you through it in a way. It's still fresh in their memory. I think like, talking to like someone like, a grandma or a older aunt, like it was so long ago that so much of the things that you're going through are just like, I remember when I was going through that. Like, I thought that was a big deal. And it's like, yeah, but it still is a big deal to me because like I'm in it right now.
Yeah.
Versus talking to somebody like an older cousin that's like, oh yeah, I get it. That was like 2 years ago for me. Let me tell you, or at least commiserate if they don't have the advice. So that's interesting. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And it kind of reminded me, so when I was visiting Ryann, we watched Love Life on HBO. And in the first season, she dates her boss. Do you remember that?
Yeah, unsuccessfully.
Right. But he's older than her.
Right.
And so that episode was kind of about how they were in different stages of their life. And his dad ends up passing away. And she goes to the funeral and proceeds to get like shit faced and then like makes a mess. And he's all pissed at her and they break up. So that's just one example. But that did pop into my head because that's true, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And that's the thing, like even in that situation, I shouldn't necessarily say unsuccessfully because hey, it's a relationship. It starts and it ends. And whether it, went the distance, quote unquote, or not, it doesn't really matter. The point is that, yeah, it was bringing about a larger issue about, like dating around and really finding like what actually works for you, because the age difference was a big deal. And it really showed when something like a life event happened, right? And that came up and that showed them like, hey, you actually this might not be as fun and exciting the whole time because he really is, dealing with this, right? Grappling with him getting older, right? So much so that his parents are getting to the age where they might pass away. And so I think I liked that because it brought about a bigger issue that I think me as a person who has dated someone older, you kind of start to understand that, the conversations kind of fall short because it's like, you're just at such a different headspace,
Right, exactly. So in the initial 10 years of marriage, people report higher levels of marital satisfaction when their partner is younger than them. So this is from an associate professor of behavioral science at the London School of Economics, who is currently researching age gap relationships and happiness. And she goes on to say, however, over time, the marital satisfaction of different aged couples declines more than similar aged partners. The probability of similar aged couples divorcing is also lower.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And I've always thought that, I mean, I guess, you can be the same age, but meet like after high school or after your 20s or whatever. But I was thinking about that because at first, when I was thinking like same age, I was thinking like couples that have been together since high school or met in college. Like you are just such a very small version of yourself. You don't really know what is going to turn up, like what you're going to turn out like even the next week. You're like, oh, I changed my hairstyle because like that didn't fit me anymore, And so like I just think that totally makes sense because whatever age you are, having someone near that age is going to be, it's just going to make a little bit more sense as you're going through life. But I mean, there's exceptions to every rule. So I'd just be interested. I don't know that many couples that have such a large age gap. So I really can't think of any like specific examples. And I hate using celebrities because they just don't live the same life that we do. So like, there's just no point in comparing.
Right. Fair. So let's pause for a little question. What are our age limits?
Ooh, the limit does not exist. No.
We'll get to the average, but I wanted to see what we thought our numbers were. So let's do it this way. Okay. You're a single gal. What do you put on? What's your age limits on your profile? Like higher and lower?
Ooh, okay. My age limit was all older than me. So I
Okay.
already knew, like, no, even guys my age, like, I don't want someone my age. um, no, my age limit was 30 to 35. And this was 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 years. Oh my God, this was 4 years ago. Yeah. So 4 years ago, my age limit was 30 to 35. So I was like 25, 26. And I was like 30 to 35. And at the time I didn't even really know if it was like relationship geared, but I just knew, like, even hookups, like, learn a skill. You know what I mean? Like, watch better porn, like, figure it out.
Fair enough.
So that was for
Yeah.
me. Yeah. What about you?
Okay. I would go a little bit lower. I haven't been on the apps in a while, but
Okay.
I would usually go like 2 years younger, and then about like 8 years older.
Yeah. Okay. So about
That
the
was
same.
usually, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was a little bit, I did 10. Yeah. So I was about 2-ish years older. Like, my limit was a little bit higher than yours, at around the same age. But you're really generous for wanting the younger guys to come into your DMs. That's really nice of you.
I just like to be bossy.
Yes. See, Morgan's a zaddy too.
Okay, so why do we judge? Okay, so let's talk about it.
Trauma.
So, according to this article, as women have gained greater economic power, the appeal of a much older spouse has fallen, making age gap relationships less common and more taboo. So, kind of leaning back to what we were talking about a little bit ago. So it says these days, even as most societies embrace increasingly progressive views on love, relationships, and the rich variety of ways they can present, couples where one person is much older than the other still face judgment. Rather than assuming people are happily together, there's a tendency to worry about possible power imbalances, just like Ryann was saying. So, people view the relationship as transactional, assuming one party is seeking to elevate their social status or wealth. Yeah. So there's even specific vocabulary to aid this judgment. An older man must be a sugar daddy, and a younger woman a gold digger or victim of daddy issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, the stereotypes are real for a reason. I mean, it doesn't mean that it applies to everything, and you should give everyone a, fair chance. But yeah, I mean, that's most common. That's what I've seen mostly. And unfortunately, I mean, I think it can work both ways. I think that, older people can want that sense of youngness again, and the power dynamic can also be work the other way as well. But unfortunately, that's what's most common, right? Like, yeah, there is a power imbalance. And hopefully, you're going into it as, not necessarily just like a healthy adult, but hopefully you're going into it knowing that there's that chance that could happen. And, if you're both really willing to do the work, you can be fine just like anybody else. But that tends to be what I see most often. I've seen it a lot.
Right, which is fair. I mean, that's where these stereotypes come from.
Mm-hmm.
So, in recent years, the vocabulary has been expanded to include relationships in which women are the significantly older partner. So, words like cougars and toy boys, which that seems backwards. I've heard boy toys, but not toy boys. Am I out of touch here, or what have you heard?
I know, yes, but I think the reason why is to put the emphasis on the toy, right? The being the trophy partner, being the plaything. The plaything, exactly. So makes sense. I don't think you're that out of touch.
Okay, thank you. So these terms reflect the rise in this kind of relationship. Statistics show that in 1963, just 15% of UK brides, and this article was written in the UK, so that's where these numbers are coming from right now. So in 1963, just 15% of UK brides were older than their grooms. By 1998, this had risen to 26%, And findings from one 2011 study suggest that the number of women married or cohabitating with a man 5 years or younger had almost tripled since the 70s.
Wow.
So get it, girl. Go get yourself a toy boy.
Yes. Love it.
Women who choose to date younger men seem to face a disproportionate amount of judgment. Quote, us humans are judgmental, and if what our neighbor is doing is misaligned with what we expect, we put a spotlight on it. Women who match with younger men go most against the grain when it comes to our narrative of marriage, and so suffer the most judgment.
Yeah.
Right? That's
exactly.
True.
It is true. And I mean, it goes all the way around. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times that I've heard people talk about gay relationships as if they're like something that's not meant to last, because, you know, gay men are so promiscuous, and like the LGBTQ community just tends to be like more promiscuous. And it's like, I mean, no, I don't think that's true. You know, I reject that. I think that there is just a lot of unspoken shit going on in every community. And if you take a good hard look at any community, I think you'll see that the promiscuity is everywhere, because people want partners, whether that be for long term or for the night or for the hour. Like people want partners, you know, and that's why I think it's just so important to question your own thoughts, you know, like it said, you know, it's, if it goes against where you're aligned, it's like, oh, this is different, you know, and before you start spouting bullshit, maybe just take a second, you know, bring that around the brain train one more time, you know, just
around the brain train.
I mean, seriously, is that actually something worth value, or is it just something that's different from what you're doing? And I try to do that all the time. You know, when people tell me something that, when people tell you something that you should have like a strong reaction to, like, oh yeah, and she's dating somebody, he's like 30 years older. It's like, okay, is that like inherently wrong? Like, is there something going on here that also is aiding this, you know, stereotype that you're perpetuating? Or is it just that we see this as an issue in our normal society, and that's something that should be like talked about, you know? And that's something that comes with time. Like, I didn't always think that way. And there are still things that I say where it's like, oh, instant judgment. And it's just like, like I said, take it around one more time. Just see, is there something there that you can unpack? Because you might be holding because you might be holding yourself back from something that you might be interested in as well, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Different doesn't equal bad.
Right.
So let's take a minute to reassess before we judge.
Right.
And speaking of assessing, how do we assess? No, that wasn't very good. But
that's good.
And speaking of assessing, let's talk about assessing a relationship with an age gap. Did you meet that older someone and you can see it going somewhere? What should you question? Okay, so I found a couple of things that might be important if you are deciding to date someone who's, let's say, 10 years. So in a lot of the research, 10 years seemed to be like the biggest, like the farthest most people would go. That's why I asked, like, what's your age difference? What's mine?
Yeah.
And I think that it also changes as you get older.
Right. Yeah.
But again, everyone has their own preferences. So if you have met someone who is older, let's talk about some things you should, could, would look for. All right. Okay, so here are some questions to ask. Is this a short-term or long-term relationship? The fun of a short-term fling may outweigh the challenges that might come with navigating long-term compatibility. This has nothing to do with age gap, I'm saying. I think this is just in general, but okay, it works here too.
Yeah, a good assessment for all relationships. Yeah.
Right, fair. So older partners might enjoy the vitality and physical attractiveness of a younger partner, and younger partners can benefit from the status, money, and knowledge of older partners. So everyone's getting something out of this.
Hey, give and take, you know.
Yeah. All right. So the next question, do you share the same long-term goals? Long-term relationships of any nature are more successful when couples want the same things. Because many life goals are age-linked, the question of shared goals can be more pressing for age gap couples. Is one of your Is one of your working? Nope, that wasn't me. There's a typo in this article. So sorry. Is one of you working and the other wants to retire? Do you want to spend your weekends in the same way? So I think those are fair questions. Like, do you still want to go party at the bar and they want to like, go to bed at 9, 8:30?
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, no, they are fair questions. And again, these can apply to any relationship, but I do think it is important because, yeah, like me and my current partner, like he is a bed at 9 person, 9:30 if he's being generous, right?
Yeah.
But it is, yes, it has a little bit to do with the age gap, but also because he is just a different person than I am in that way, right? And so I think it is important because if he was older, I think I might second guess it a little bit more and be like, oh, I don't need to go to bed early. Like, what is this? When in reality, like I do need to go to bed early because like I have things to do in the morning. So
right.
It's good to assess all around. So yeah, I appreciate that question.
Yeah, definitely. So number 3, do either of you want children? So again, this one comes up, but it's true. If you're in a long-term relationship and one partner is older, an open discussion about whether you want to have children, biological, adopted, fostered, can be especially important. Certainly, this is a discussion that partners in all long-term relationships benefit from having, but age gap relationships may face particular challenges. Older women with younger men are less likely to be able to have a biological child and or may be interested in parenting young children in their 40s or 50s.
Right.
Whereas older men may likewise be wary of having a child, knowing that they will be older when the children are teens.
Right.
These are important conversations to broach when a relationship is expected to be long-term.
Yeah, fair. And I have no comment because I don't want those things. So
Ryan's like, skip.
Yeah, I know, pass. You can just skip like 15 seconds ahead.
Right, yeah. All right, and the last one is, do you have your friends' support? So our friends and family play a role in our relationship success, whether we wish them to or not. In general, when friends approve of relationships, they help sustain our relationships, whereas their disapproval can be accompanied by behaviors that make it harder for us to feel invested in our relationships.
Yeah.
Age gap relationships are often stigmatized, but if friends and family approve, the relationship becomes easier to sustain.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. It's tough both ways. If your significant other doesn't like your friends or family or vice versa, that's really tough. I don't know how people get through that unless you just decide to, start this new life with this person completely separate, which again can go back to the manipulation and the power imbalance of it all. Because if that older person has the means to, basically sweep you off your feet literally and take you to this new life, that might be aligned with your goals, right? And you might be on track for the first few assessments, but once it gets to this one, like how important is that to you, And I do think it's important to keep you grounded with outside perspectives. But one thing I will say is, everything with a grain of salt, like people can only talk past their own trauma, like or through their own trauma, they're only going to be able to give you their own experiences. But it doesn't mean that you should, just completely disregard it. It is important to have that, grounding outside of your relationship, because you will get swept up in the honeymoon of it all, especially if they have the means to do it. I mean, you're getting flued out every weekend. You're like, I mean, this is great. He has everything I need, our goals align perfectly right now, but in the long term, like, what is that going to look like? Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Well, those are the tips. Those are the big questions to ask.
Just the tips.
Just the tips.
Yeah, save yourself a kid or two.
I don't know if you want to reveal this, but I'm going to ask it. So, what is the biggest age gap you've had in a relationship, a hookup, or a one-night stand?
Well, seeing as how
you don't have to say how old you were and how old they were, but you can, if you just feel more comfortable saying, like, how many years in between the two of you.
Oh, I don't really care about that.
It's up to you.
I was just going to say, seeing as how I don't remember most of their names, I definitely don't know their age. So can't really give you the stats on that. I don't think any of my hookups were that much wildly older than me. I wouldn't imagine that to be the case, just because like the settings that we were in, like you'd be hard pressed to find a 40-year-old dude like really pushing it at like 2 a.m. You know what I mean? It's a lot.
Right.
So I'll just say that. But my biggest age gap was 15 years, unbeknownst to me. I thought it was 9 years, which is still pretty, you know, that was up there for me. But then I found out later that he was lying, and it was actually 15 years. But again, he acted younger than me in most of the situations. So again, it's not worse or better, because it was just shit all around. It didn't really matter about the age gap, but it was a big important point that showed me like, yes, this is definitely within the realm of manipulation, knowledge, power imbalance, like all of it, right? Just experience wise, it was just clearly, once I found out the actual age gap, it was clear and like relevant in everything from that point on. So needless to say, we didn't last much longer than that, but 15 years. So yeah.
Okay.
What about you?
Mine, I believe, was 13 years.
Oh, all right.
I think. Yeah. This was a hookup though. So now that I'm thinking about it, he also could have been lying. He could have been older.
Definitely.
Yeah. So
Morgan's like,
I was there.
Yeah, what? Morgan's like, he's got an orthopedic background, and like, what is that in? No.
Right. There's like Ben Gay on the counter. I'm like, what is going on? Yeah. No, but I was doing it for the experience, you know, just trying it out. And I'm just gonna say the older guys don't always have it all figured out either. That's all I'll say on that.
I know. We'll leave it at that. Oh, for sure. I mean, the 15-year age gap, I don't think that's why he was good at what he was good at, but he was very good at what he was good at. So, yeah.
So don't write him off just yet, people.
I mean, ride him and then write him off, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just adjust your age settings, give it a try.
Yeah.
And then if not, change it back.
Change it back, right? And also just see, right? Like my expectations dating wise were just so much different than meeting somebody older than me. And that helps a lot because it lets you know what you're getting into from the start, right? Like if I know I'm, you know, have my settings set for 15 years older than me, then I should be, you know, expecting people with older references and people that want to do different things. And I think it is really important. Like I say like older references, but I'm serious, like, you know, cultural classics and cultural norms and the way that people go about things is widely affected by the time that they grew up, you know, and shaped and formed those opinions. And so I definitely think there's something to be said about that. You know, I've spent time with a lot of older people, like in bar settings or in, you know, like fun. I've spent a lot of time whatever. I spent a lot of time with older people, and I know that it does come into play a lot more than you think. It's not, you know, like the saying, age is nothing but a number. I mean, like a little bit more than just a number. You know what I mean?
Right. It's like your life experience. That sounds like really obvious, but I mean like the things you've experienced in the world during the years of your life.
Right. Yes.
You know, like,
yeah,
it's a totally different time. You know, I think that's why 10 is kind of where people feel comfortable, like saying their limit is, you know, I'm sure if we did a survey, if someone asked you on the street, what's the oldest you date? Most people would probably go with 10 because I think those references still stand, you know?
Right. Yeah, you're like bordering on different generations, right? And like generational differences. And so again, it can work. And if you're both open-minded people that want to learn more about the other, I mean, it totally can work. But it seems as though you'd probably handle situations a lot differently. You would have a different way of thinking about the world and, you know, how you fit into it. But that's why I say like celebrity is so different, because the world you're living in when you're rich or famous or any of those things is just a completely different set of cards, right? Like you just move through the world so differently. And so you might be able to, you know, forego some of those, you know, assessments that everyday regular folk actually need to take into consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair. No, that's really true. Well, like on that note, are we doing this wrong?
Hell yeah, I did it wrong. Oh my gosh. That was the biggest mistake I've ever had in my dating history. But again, it was for other reasons, but a lot of it had to do with the fact that like if he was my same age or even 5 years within my same age range, it would have been understandable because I was still figuring out a lot of about myself as well. I was still unpacking trauma and I still am. But when you're 15 years older and you're lying about it, it lets me know that you're not ready to actually do the work, that you don't want to actually grow because you're trying to pretend that your life has not happened the way it has. So, yeah.
True.
Definitely.
Yeah. He's trying to relive something, trying to rewind.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, didn't work. Not effective. 0 out of 10 would not recommend.
0 out of 10. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
What about you?
I think I've done it wrong. I definitely did it wrong the other way.
Oh yeah. Morgan liked the young ones, eh?
I wonder 2 times. 1 time for sure, I know, but you're right. It's not like I was asking to check. Well, I shouldn't say check IDs. That sounds really fucked up. I'm cutting that part out. It's not like I was like,
no, we're keeping that in because that is a really good point. Yes, we're keeping it in. That is a really good point because no, seriously, like when you are around like the 20, I'd say like 23 to 27 age range, 18-year-old boys really, which is what they are to me now, 18-year-old boys versus like 21, like what is actually the difference there? Like what is the difference in face? I'm not really seeing it. And so I really did have to realize that like, yeah, if you go out to somewhere like the movies, like they could be on spring vacation or, you know, like spring break from high school or spring vacation from like college. So yes, they're
okay. Yeah,
check
that's
IDs.
fair.
Okay, let's just say that.
Okay, check
if it's
IDs.
a one night stand, if it's a one night
stand.
But if it's a one night stand, I don't think it's the craziest thing to check IDs. But again, like hookup culture, I just think is so nuanced, and I don't like when people just lump it into this like, oh, everyone needs to be like around the same age group, or like you need to know, like you just need to be honest with yourself that like once you're out there and dating and going out to bars and stuff. I used a fake ID for 3 years and it wasn't fake, it was real, it was just not mine. So we're going to be honest about the fact that like people do lie about their ages for many different reasons. It's not always just to be younger or older, you know, or whatever.
Right.
Sometimes it's just you just want to be in the club doing your thing, you know?
Yeah. He was of age though. I just want to make that very clear. He was just younger than me. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Fair. Yeah. I actually do remember a time when I hooked up with someone younger than me in Santa Barbara, actually. And he was a nice guy, you know, like we had a good time, but I do remember just thinking like
he's a sweet boy.
Exactly. He was a sweet boy. And I was like all over the place and still wild too. And I was just like, yeah, but I'm like wild and aware. You're like, oh yeah, like I'm so cool. And I'm like, ugh, no, you're not. You're just 19, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on that note. Well, that wraps up this week's episode. Hope we helped you guys at least determine your age settings on your dating profiles.
Hey, that's a win.
Pick it up a notch.
Yeah.
Go down. Make sure to ask for IDs. Whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Give people a chance. Give love a chance.
Give people a chance. Yeah. She also said go down, which, you know, that's up to you. That's your own preference. And but what you give, you should receive as well. Okay. Talking to you ladies and bottoms out there. Yeah. Reciprocity.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for another episode. If you would like to tell us about your age gap story, you can write us at wrongthepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us on social media at wrongthepodcast on Twitter and Instagram. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and check us out on YouTube for the visual conversation. And on that note, we will see you guys next time. All right. Bye.
Bye.